I should have started an hour
Start
ago.
drinking. Get your champagnes in. Here they come. Hello, everyone. Chris, Paul, Joanne, always lovely. Robin, thanks for coming. Holly's here. Danielle's here. Jackie, always a pleasure. Becca, Sean Sydney, listening in. Make sure you say hello to each other. No one else can see that you're here, so make sure you say hello to everyone. That's Life Gourmet. That means Mariko's here. Now I'm scared. Okay. Oh, good. Everyone's excited. Well, Sean. Hello, everyone. Look, it's daylight. It's crazy. No more mood lighting in the background. I can actually work with daylight. But welcome, everyone, to Wine Coach at Home. For those who've never met me, my name's Nick. I'm the head sommelier at Peter Pan Tree, and I'm here to talk about some delicious wines and a secret sake that I have put in. And this week we're talking women in wine or women winemakers, because that's always something that we need a refresher on. We need to get reignited, passionate about, and something that I really enjoy exploring. And I find super rewarding for everyone, myself, my somms, the guests who come into the restaurant / wine shop. So I'm excited to pour this lineup. As always, I've got some great co-hosts with me. I'll introduce them to you. Thank you. I don't know what side of the screen they're on, but on one side of the screen you've got Mika. Hello, Mika. Thank you for coming. Mika is a great sommelier, fellow sommelier, great friend who I'm super excited to finally get you on the show. How are you today?
Good. Enjoying the sunshine. So really happy to be here. I feel like this might be payback for all the times that you've come on for me. So happy to be here.
And one was for one of the wines we were talking about. Oh, 3 times, but that's fine.
Yeah. Oh.
But who's counting?
Yeah, never forget. Okay.
No. You were the first person ever to invite me on a webinar, and I'll never forget that. And I've always enjoyed hanging out. And it's when the shoe's on the other foot, it's low stakes. You're just talking about wine. There's no like responsibility to make sure everything's working. So I'm happy to repay the favor. You can just sit back, relax, drink some wine with us, and have a quick chat. It's all good. And then my other co-host, the legend herself, Anne Martin, is here. Thank you, Anne, for coming. I'm very excited to have you. You are so respected in this community and our industry, and I hope you're gonna have some fun with us. So thank you for coming. And how are you today?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I was thrilled to be asked. I mean, your tastings are wonderful. I have partaken in a couple of myself and really enjoyed them. So I was thrilled to be asked.
Yeah, this is really fun. And I gotta stop talking because there's 5. And whenever there's 5 drinks in front of us, I forget how we have to move through it, because soon it'll be 8:15 and everyone has things to do. But as always,
like what? Yeah, like what?
I mean, there'll be approximately 7.5 minutes of daylight left, and people will have parks to meet up on, and dogs to walk, and bikes to ride. I don't know, the things that Toronto people need to do before the sun sets is mind-boggling. But I'm super excited. I wanted to quickly introduce a little women in wine making, and I guess women in wine in general. The first thing I want to state is a disclaimer. Obviously, I'm a man. I've benefited from this male-dominated industry because I'm a man, and I'm about to talk about things that obviously I can't personally sort of have experience, but I want to acknowledge that, I'm still passionate about it, and I still want to, there's still many things to fix. And if my tone seems glib and I seem like I'm joking, I do take this very seriously, even though five wines in, it may not seem that way.
Is that a disclaimer?
Yeah. the things I'm going to start sort of spouting out about Anne Sperling when we get to wine number 5. No. But this is super fun, and I'm super excited, and I don't know, I keep saying that same thing, but let's just start tasting. So wine number 1 is not a wine, it's a sake, and I'll admit I'm trying to be a bit sneaky by putting sake in every tasting that I can do, because I really want people to drink more sake. And in the theme of women winemakers, I decided to find a sake. Well, I found a sake that has a woman in a leadership position. So the sake we've got is Kirakuko Honjozo. There's a lot. I'm going to say a lot of terms that you may not understand, or you may not sort of, you can't even like conceptualize. Don't worry. Just taste the sake, put it in your mouth, experience it. Let your palate guide you, and then just let all my drone sort of wash over you. I don't know, Anne and Mika. Do you have much experience with sake, or do you like drinking sake? What do you think of this one?
I'll be totally honest. I really know nothing about sake. I know I enjoy it. I love the umami, but beyond that, I'm fish out of water right now. So I'm completely in your hands.
Anne, what about you?
I love sake, and I am dying to learn more about it. Unfortunately, and I would love to serve more and have more on the list. Unfortunately, it's not really going to happen, but it's on my list of courses to take, is a sake course, because I think it's a fascinating art and quite different from wine, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think I've always found that as a sommelier and someone who loves wine and appreciates wine, sake really helped me exercise my muscles, you had to do when I first was learning about wine, like understanding terms, verbalizing thoughts and sensations that I just weren't really familiar with me. And it really helped me put wine into a different perspective. I obviously suggest studying with Mariko-san in her Hako Gakko seminars that she occasionally does. You'll learn so much about sake and you'll taste so much. But this sake is, and I'm sorry, Mariko, for putting you, shouting you out in whilst you are viewing. But this sake is from central Japan. And this isn't a sake, this isn't a female sake maker. Mayuko Kita, her family has run the sake for 9 generations. She's the 9th generation of her family to take a leadership role in the sake business. What I really found was interesting is that when she was studying in business school and university, she kind of came to this realization that if she wanted to keep her sake and her brand relevant, she needed to learn how to brew sake. And she as well as learning how to run the business, has taken an active role in the production and the brewing of sake in her brewery. And that's a really unusual sort of step. And I think that's a really cool thing. And to a point where she is now responsible for making the koji in the sake. So long story short, koji is the preparation of the rice with the microorganisms that help create the alcohol in the sake and help brew the sake, which is always considered, the koji is considered the heart of the sake, and what is done during that process really defines the character and the flavor and the style of sake. It's not necessarily the rice, it's more about how you prepare the sake, which I think is super important. And the fact that he is now responsible for that segment of the process, for someone who, stepped out of university to while studying, was like, this is what I want to do. And if I'm going to do it right, I've got to be in the trenches to be making sake, which is something I really respect, and super fun. The secret about this lineup, and this is the only exception to the lineup, is that all of these winemakers have dined at Peter Pan. It was kind of the way I figured out how to do the lineup was which female winemakers have actually come to Peter Pan over the years. And Mayuka is the only one who hadn't, but obviously I only started selling sake in my restaurant about, I don't know, 4 hours ago. So like, that's anyway, I really like this. I hope everyone likes too. Please give me your, everyone in the chat, like, tell me what you think of this sake, because, you know, selling sake and talking about sake is a very new skill to me, and I'd really like people's feedback to sort of, you know, tell. Mika, you sell a sake on your portfolio.
One.
Maybe you should bring some over to us today. Sorry, that was me throwing your company under the bus, and I apologize, but I couldn't help.
No, I think it's great. There's like this great juxtaposition between a beautiful kind of florality to it, but then there's also a bit more of like a bitter kind of broader aroma that's coming in on the back end. Sorry.
That's really good. That's a really good note. And broad is, that's absolutely kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I find it very floral initially, but then it is on the palate, it really expands. And then there's a really lovely sort of bitterness on the finish. It's beautifully balanced and a lot more powerful, I thought, than the nose would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would be amazing with sushi.
Yeah. There's one, like, I'll go into one more detail about sake, which I think is really important about this, is that this isn't a daiginjo sake. So daiginjo is like this common, ginjo is a really common style. And that's like typical, like melon, banana, tropical fruit, very clean, very elegant style. And that's very popular now. And that sells a lot of sake. And in an industry that, you know, struggles to find relevance, especially in a worldwide market, you've got to give people what they know. And one of the cool things that Mayuko is doing is she acknowledges that, but she's also trying to acknowledge the more historical style of sake that her sake brewery is famous for, which is called the Noto, sort of a Noto style. So Noto is, where this region is in Japan, had a lot of influence from the prefectures directly north to it, who ate a lot of seafood, strong seafood flavors, and all these fishermen would, in the winter, travel south to work in these breweries to make sake. And so they tended to make sakes that suited their cuisine, which tended to be these strong flavors. And that's when we don't often talk about terroir of sake in terms of like the soil and the ground, but from a cultural perspective, what people eat, what they did, what their lifestyle was, really does affect sort of regionality in sake. And this is a big style of it. And so it's really great that there is acknowledgement of modern trends, but also like a slow sort of progression to more traditional historical styles, which are very relevant and very tasty, which is why we enjoy this. Like, why we enjoy this is it doesn't taste like the sakes we have in sushi restaurants, you know, or that are served in cans. It has a much different profile. And sake is like wine in that it expresses different ways. You can't just say, oh, this is what white wine tastes like, because we all know that's impossible.
I can see when you say, I think it's really interesting that you say that it goes with stronger seafood, because I've spent some time in Japan and the food is so predominant on all the different, and what's astonishing are all the different styles. So it really makes sense when you say that, you know, it was to pair with stronger dishes, because you can really feel that it is a pretty powerful sake compared to some of the more delicate ones that I've ordered in restaurants, which I think is the current style, as you say.
Absolutely. And like, there's nothing wrong with the current style. It is a completely valid style. It's worth exploring more. And to do that you don't have to learn more, you understand the terms, just like drink more and like, you know, drink some strength.
Always a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only thing I say. Just let your palate guide you, and like always, if you see a sake by the glass or you see a bottle, buy it and see, oh, what do I like about this? What I don't. That's how I did it, and I'm I'm someone who drinks a lot of wine and knows a lot about wine, and like when I come to sake, like my just goes like that, and like it was really hard to move past that fear and intimidation. What I just did was got Mariko to like pour me lots of sake, and here I am ranting about Noto style sake. Like literally 4 weeks ago, I would have not understood anything. But let's talk about some wine, Mika. I am tired of talking about sake. Okay, number 2. I don't have the bottles in front of me. I'm so busy right now. My life is absolute chaos. And I was like, I stood in front of, shut up.
So it's the Trail Estate Chardonnay.
Trail Estate Chardonnay. I don't remember the vintage. Someone please help me in the chat.
It is. Ooh, we don't have a vintage.
No, we don't. I think it's 2018.
2018 sounds good.
Yeah. Trail Estate, County Chardonnay. It is 2018, absolutely, because I just remember looking at the bottle today that someone was asking what the vintage was. Mackenzie is the winemaker, a really amazing winemaker. Very funny, very like just casual and like just very approachable, very like doesn't take herself too seriously, and the wines have a sense of humor, and this is the more classic style of the wines that she makes. But there, if you want to talk Prince Edward County, we should be talking Chardonnay, because that is what, I don't know, in my mind, the county does phenomenally well.
I agree. It's a much more linear style than, say, Niagara. And you really, I mean, the limestone in PEC is incredible, and you really taste it in the Chardonnay, which is, I think, wonderful.
This is opening up so well.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met Mackenzie was at Rodney's at some kind of weird VQA oyster party. The things that the VQA do sometimes. Anyway, I was just standing chatting to her, and I was like, she's like, oh, this is my unfiltered Chardonnay, which is what we're drinking. This is what, 3 years ago? And I was like, unfiltered? Like, this is clear. I don't understand how it's unfiltered. And then she goes to explain how she continually racks this Chardonnay to a point where it just becomes clear. And racking is where you have wine in a vessel, and you transfer it to another vessel and leave sort of the sediment behind, and that's called racking. And so if you do this over and over again, you eventually get something that's clear, because all the solids have sort of settled out. It's a very laborious and time-intensive process, but if you want to get low intervention and you don't want to do any crazy filtration, this is how you have to do it. And it shows in the wine. It's just full of flavor. There's so much going on here.
And she seems to have a very strong science background. So, and that seems to be an interest of hers, which I find really interesting and cool in a woman winemaker, to have that kind of precision. And you can see it in the wines; they're really quite precise.
Mika, is it? I don't know. Like, this is where I wanted to talk about Ontario and like women in Ontario in our profession, and this is where I'm like, now Mika, talk about it. No. I don't know. I guess my question would be like, were you aware of this wine before it happened, like, or like before it's presented in front of you? And like, I don't know, Trail Estate, I feel, has like been making an impact in our market. I would wonder if you had anything to share about that.
I'm not overly familiar. I recognize the wines, and I know they're known for pet nat and skin contact wines. Beyond that, I wouldn't say that I was ever well versed, and definitely did not know about Mackenzie. So I think it's really cool. I think that'll be kind of the conversation throughout this is, until it's really presented to you, it's not necessarily obvious. And I think when we're looking at Ontario producers, it's really not obvious. I think it's so cool that you have 2 in this lineup, but you would know a lot better than me, but there really aren't a lot of female winemakers.
The only other one that springs to mind is the woman at Qualis. And then I think Ravine now, that's a woman, she's a female winemaker. Ravine
Dana at
Winery.
Adamo, she's the winemaker at Adamo. I mean, they make a lot of wines, but they make some cool stuff as well.
Oh yes, Adamo.
Caroline Grange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something I don't think we specifically recognize, but like, there's no like you could do a tasting and like talk about female winemakers from Canada. I mean, at least, and
For
have
sure.
a really cool. Like they're some of the top wines in the country. Like hands down. I think that's super fun.
Yeah.
But also like learning about their journey, I think is really interesting. And Mackenzie, I met her years ago when she worked at Norman Hardy's, and then just how far she's come, it's amazing. And a lot of that was self-driven. You know, you don't get maybe the leg up that some other genders get. So she's worked really hard, and I think it's impressive that her wines are doing so well.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful that her name becomes ubiquitous with the county in the same way Norm's was, you know, and because it definitely helps propel a region and a sub-region of Ontario to like greater heights when you have a superstar. And it doesn't, I mean, it could be anyone. I don't like Canada needs to do a lot, like Ontario needs to do a lot to like champion their own wines. I mean, the VQA does a lot, but like time and time again, I'm confronted with, oh, I don't drink Canadian wine, I don't drink Canadian wine, I don't drink Canadian wine. But like, as much as it can sound tokenistic, like celebrating a woman winemaker, a Canadian woman winemaker, does help bridge the gap between people to go, oh, well, then I'll give it a try. And like, yeah. I know the wine isn't bad. I know Canadian wine isn't bad. It's just you need a reason to give people. You need to give people a reason to like break through their preconceptions, and you know, maybe the women winemakers in Ontario are the way forward. They're our hope. I really like this one. I drank it all.
It's beautiful.
It's the Nick seal of approval. The glass is empty.
I mean, we're getting close to Nick being offensive. No, not offensive, but controversial. This may be the wine
tipping point.
Cancelled.
Oh, cool. Well, we're forewarned.
Yeah, I know. This could be historic.
Bring it on.
No, never. I liked it. I liked it, and this one could go really far. And for those who you know, maybe this isn't their style, this Chardonnay isn't their style. Mac also makes, and Charles Estate also make some great natural wines that are really popular with the West End sort of natural wine scene. From Pet Nats to Sparkling Reds to Piquettes to see how I roll my eyes when the Piquette gets named, and all these like easy drinking, delicious summer wines. And I think you won't, if you frequent some restaurants, some wine bars, some wine shops this year, you'll definitely see Mackenzie's wines represented, because they're all experimental and really affordable, which is always the key.
And for me with this, like, it's so interesting. There's so much depth, but it's still clean and very linear. So yeah, I opened my wines now about an hour ago, and I'm really glad that I did, because when I first tasted, I'm like, oh my God, this is delicious, crushable Chardonnay. But now I'm like, holy, there's so much spice going on here, this incredible creamy texture, but still very, very clean and linear, which I'm excited to try the other wines or dive deeper into the other wines based on that.
I thought it was really interesting that she came from that sort of very classic winemaking. And if you look at the places she worked at, Bouchard Finlayson in South Africa, and now she's gone into the whole natural wine side of things. I would really be curious to hear how that evolution happened. But her wine is very clean, which is surprising for somebody who, you know, is sort of plays in that other playground as well, in the West End wine scene, as Nick calls it.
No regrets. No regrets. You know who you are.
That's them.
You know who you are. West End wine scene. I see what you buy on Instagram.
That is the best. I know it's a thing. I just find it funny that you
For a
named
balanced wine list, people. It's not hard to do. You know. You know,
Agreed.
but you can play in both playgrounds. And I think I personally believe that's a better expression of being a sommelier is playing in both playgrounds.
Sure, absolutely.
And I like the playground because we are all children when it comes to wine. We're all big babies who just want to drink PYCM by the glass and like. Wine number three. Hey, let's going through this stuff.
We're doing well. We're doing well. We can do it.
Good time. Good time.
This is so good. I love this wine. I love everything about. I love Bruzia. I love Italy. I love Cristiana. I love this wine. I love Montepulciano. Everything about it. I'm not going to talk about this wine because Mika's represented this wine in two separate agencies, and I think I really, you know, you hear me talk all the time. I'll tell you my Cristiana story when we get to wine number 4. But I don't know, Mika. I mean, you don't have to tell me about Cristiana, but like, you know, what you've worked with her wines for, you know, a few years, much longer than I have. Like, you know.
Well, what's interesting is this is actually, it kind of hit me about an hour before we logged on. This is a bit of a full circle moment for me. And, you know, I do want to touch a little bit on having a career in wine, and I'm sure we'll kind of weave our way through that. But when I started in wine, I had kind of just dove headfirst. I'd taken 2 wine courses, nothing crazy, nothing serious. I moved over from restaurants and decided to take a go at the wine agency side of this business. And so I started working with an agency, Crew Wine Merchants, and at the time they had represented Tiberio. And so I was invited, it was my first week working there, and I was invited to this lunch. And there's Christina Tiberio, and I'm sitting there like, I guess it would be 4 years ago now. And I'm like, what am I doing here? This is so cool. My job is I'm sitting at lunch having this beautiful meal. We're drinking wine. There's this incredible woman across the table from me telling me about, you know, their project and how they came about it. And so here we are now, and I'm invited. I'm so honored to have been invited to this alongside Anne Martin. It's like, it's a bit of a pinch me now, full circle moment. Here we are. If only I could tell that girl it's going to be okay.
It will be.
But yeah, I mean, these wines are truly incredible. What's really cool is Christiana's father. My understanding is he worked in the wine industry, but not on the production side. I think he cultivated grapes. Not exactly sure, but he was more on like the science side. And so he stumbled across this vineyard, and they discovered that it had old plantings of Trebbiano. So they bought the vineyard and just kind of took a chance. And they revamped the vines, and it took a couple years, of course, and then they started producing fruit. And so the focus was to do native grape varieties and kind of go back to the old kind of winemaking. Of course, Trebbiano Toscano, which we're more familiar with, is widely planted, and that's what we're exposed to, especially here in Ontario. So the assumption is these are kind of poor quality, just junky table wines. So, you know, they're really kind of the head of changing that and changing the region as a whole. And so Christiana herself, so her father bought the vineyard and, of course, rehabilitated the vines, the land, and just gave the property or handed it over to his son and daughter. And so Christiana, having studied chemistry, you know, took over as winemaker, and she's truly incredible. Nick, are you going to play the video?
Never. It's just mine. No, I'm going to play the video now. I was waiting till you got to it. You hear me up, otherwise I was going to talk over you. Okay,
you're doing a great job. Keep going, Mika.
Here we go. This is my Christiana Hello World
Ciao everyone, I'm so sorry I cannot be with you tonight, but I'm sure you will have an amazing dinner. I know your wine list is impressive, so I'm sure you will have a memorable dinner with food and wine. About my wine, you are going to taste the Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, my Trebbiano d'Abruzzo. Trebbiano d'Abruzzo is my favorite wine. I love the Trebbiano Abruzzese. As you probably already know, the Trebbiano Abruzzese is represent the origin of my estate, the reason why I started making wine in the place of Abruzzo. And I love the personality of this wine, so fresh, elegant, but intense and complex at the same time. I love the capability of Trebbiano Abruzzese to translate the precise elements of his terroir. So it's a wine with a precise sense of the place. It's a wine with personality, with character, and vibrancy, but elegance at the same time. I wish you an amazing dinner, and I miss you all so much. I hope to see you as soon as possible. Ciao a tutti, and ciao Nick! Ciao!
Oh, oh,
Aww.
oh.
And
No,
so,
listen.
Nick, you would have tasted with Christiana a lot more than I have, but you know, she has an absolutely incredible palate. She's worked around the world, and she came home because her belief is that you should make wine in a place that you fully understand. And so because she grew up in Abruzzo, that's where she lived, of course, being brought up under her father, she truly understood the land, and that was her focus. And I find that really quite beautiful. Someone who could, you know, spend time in Burgundy, Champagne, traveling the world, and she went home to a region that really up until now has really been overlooked. So, yeah.
I love this one.
It's wonderful.
Over the last few years, Cabirio wines have been represented by Halpern, and what we're seeing is this like real ascendancy of these wines, and this wine is getting out there, and like you'll see them a lot, but like this is a really great example where the wines are very affordable from a region that isn't necessarily well known, or if it is well known, it's known for not very good wines. But like, and Mika touched on this point, like Trebbiano is a common name and it's a very popular wine. It is worth, if you see Trebbiano, like, and if you're at a restaurant and there's a somm, like talk to them and say, okay, is this Trebbiano Toscana or Tuscan Trebbiano or Trebbiano Abruzzese, which is Abruzzo Trebbiano. And Abruzzo Trebbiano is definitely much more, it's completely different. It's a completely different wine, and it makes this dense, complex, like tightly coiled spring of flavor that I just know is just going to explode with, you know, with age and in time, and people really love it. And it's like $30 a bottle, like easy.
Yeah.
No brainer.
Exactly. I love the tightly coiled spring descriptor. And then it kind of went into
Yeah, there's a good balance of like, I mean, I'm very tired, so like my
okay,
filter is slowly melting away. But look, Christiana deserves you know, a lot of excitement. Abruzzo isn't famous for like a classically great wine growing region, but there are two of the greatest winemakers are from Abruzzo. Emilio Pepe, who makes Montepulciano, Cerasiolo, Trebbiano, and Valentini, who is probably the best white wine in Italy, but almost impossible to find because he makes so much more. And he makes Montepulciano, Trebbiano, and Cerasiolo. And now there's Christiana, whose wines are accessible and affordable, and are making wines exactly with the exact same potential that these two greats have made. And I only see how great these wines are going to be in like 10 years. And I'm going to be this wizened old Tom saying, I remember when this was $20 a bottle. And like,
yeah, the price quality ratio is crazy. Like it's really fantastic, and you don't see that very often anymore. And also I think these are made from really old vines.
Yeah.
And you can really, you get that complexity. This is not Tuscan, like, I mean, Italian whites can be used to be a little dull. I mean, you could hardly distinguish the grape varietals, but this has real character, and it's, I think, a wonderful, wonderful white. It's the white wine for the summer.
And like, you make a really good point. It's like, Italian whites weren't extremely thought of, but that is actually changing really quickly.
It's changing very quickly. It's impressive.
And it also means you can get some of the best white wines in Italy for a fraction of what they're probably, like a fraction of the best reds in Italy.
Especially comparing when you compare it to the reds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there are lots of other regions that the whites are undervalued, like my favorite region in the world, Germany, or country in the world for whites, Germany, but
I didn't know you're a German wine fan. I thought you just love Lambrusco. Oh, this is a whole new world. Oh, we're going to be talking much more, Anne.
Huge. So, but it's that quality price ratio that makes wines really interesting. And although I, for my job, am lucky enough, or sometimes I feel kind of unlucky enough just to buy a lot of very expensive wines, I love wines that deliver above their price grade. And this is a perfect example.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I love the comments. I see chamomile, herbal. Like,
yeah, chamomile was great.
Great one. Yeah, for sure. And that's what this has. And I mean, I can't get over, not to keep using the same word, but it's so linear. It's so direct. Like just the acidity and the tightness. Like it's really
the tightly coiled spring.
The coiled spring. I'm gonna write that down. I have to reuse that.
So Christian also makes another cuvee of Trebbiano called Fonte Canale, which is like Miko mentioned the original vineyard that her father found. It's the Fonte Canale vineyard, and she makes a Trebbiano based just on that vineyard, and it is considered literally one of the best wines in Italy. I have one bottle at Peter Pan. I'm hopefully trying to get some more so that maybe I can pour it by the glass so that people can experience it. I think it's one of those wines that, if you're curious about wine, if you love Italian wine, like it's really easy to get, like we were saying, it's really easy to find the best wine, like taste the best wines in Italy, best white wines in Italy. You can taste Verdicchio, you can taste Etna Bianco, you can taste Piano, sure, I don't just love Campagna, but you can taste Timorasso, you can taste Pinot Grigio from El Adige or Frulli. They're easy wines. It's when you get to Nebbiolos and the Brunellos and the Chianti Classicos and the Etnas and the Taralsis, that's everything sort of, the price is just like, phew,
yeah.
But if you love Italian wine, white wine is a really great starting point to like try a breadth of these delicious, crazy good wines.
And incredible food wines. As like that, because Italy is all about the food. So
speaking of food, Cheese Corner.
Oh,
perfect segue.
Hey, wow.
Well done.
Thank you.
Cheese Corner. I know. I got the Glengarry Lancaster. Glengarry is from Ontario, and I want to say Lancaster, Ontario, but now I'm confused. The Lancaster is, I got that wrong. The Lancaster is cow's milk Dutch side cheese. One of the most highly awarded cheeses in Ontario, or Canadian cheeses. They're delicious. I got great with Sauvignon.
Ah, Perfect segue.
What
Another,
cheeses? What did you get? Did anyone else get cheeses? I don't know. It's not required.
oh, I was going to, and then I lost the day.
Only you guys living in the cheese boutique. I don't know.
I have to cut myself off from that place
I
sometimes.
know, me too.
I have to say I have a meat place there now. So there's this section at the cheese boutique where I think they're just selling off maybe the ends, but I raid that area. So
Free for $30? Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, I'm all over that spot.
Is that like the sale rack?
Sorry, it was a Glengarry Cheeses is a famous female cheese maker. I'm going to post the link in the
Lancaster on.
I'm going to post the website in the chat. It's super delicious. Every time I do cheese corner, I go, I need to learn more about cheese. I have nothing to say. Except how great it is.
Is it a bloomy rind? Like, so is it kind of pinkish?
No, this was a wax rind. This one was wax. I don't know. I'm not even going to search anything on the internet. I'm in the middle of the show. It's not me just like popping my emails.
So Monforte, yeah, Ruth Clausen. She's a female cheesemaker, a big female cheesemaker in Ontario.
Yeah. Let's do wine coach at home, but just cheese version. Glasses of cheese, just like pouches full of cheese. I'm just going to do pouch. I'm going to do pouches, and then you think lit wine's coming out, but cheese just comes out.
Have you ever watched Wallace and Gromit? He has a cheese obsession.
I mean, who doesn't? And if you don't have a cheese obsession,
what's wrong with you? What's wrong with
dairy
you?
allergy, barring some dairy allergy, just end meeting. Like that's all you need. Kidding. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Sea spray vibes coming from the Trebbiano. Yeah, Trebbiano. Abruzzo is where I want to go when I go to Italy next. It's going to be beautiful. It is kind of near the seaside-ish. This is like there is definitely maritime influence coming from.
Have you been, Nick?
Iberian cheese. Me? No.
Me neither. We'll go together when we can.
Yeah, Christiana. I want a sponsored trip. No, I don't want a sponsored trip. I mean, I do want a sponsored trip, but not from Christiana. Someone else can pay. Wine number 4. Hey, we're moving through it. Wine number 4, 2017, Domaine Amoin, Roche-Amoin, Savagnin, Loire Valley, France. Such a great wine. I'm just going to start it there. It's a big wine. This is a really like top wine in France. Tell me what you think.
Wow. That is special, actually.
So the winemaker here is a wonderful person called Tessa LaRoche. Her family has been in the Savagnin region for generations. Domaine Amoin. Roche-Amoin is the appellation. I think they're the monopole, but I'm not necessarily certain about that. I have to, if only there was a Loire Valley expert in the chat, Rachel, who can explain. I know. But this is Chenin Blanc, a really
I
interesting.
think they are a monopole.
A really interesting expression of Chenin and a very unique expression of Chenin. So the definition of the traditional sort of markers of a Savagnin is this high alcohol, high acid, very rich, very kind of like compacted style of Chenin. And it's a very small region in the Loire Valley that make this very one unique expression of
and usually quite oxidized.
Yes.
But this is not that style.
No. Nicolas Joly is kind of one of the hallmarks, as is the LaRoche family. They kind of, kept that, they kind of defined Savagnin. Nicolas Joly is obviously a very eccentric
He sure is.
Winemaker. But that said, his daughter, Tessa was saying, is much more
Real.
real person. Yeah. And it's a really small community, and it isn't like that everyone knows each other and everyone supports. And Nicholas's daughter definitely has a big leadership role in teaching people about biodynamics in that region, and I think that's kind of fun.
And they're leaders in that region for France, really, because they have the big wine fair in Angers, and then La Dive, which I gather is not going to be in the cave anymore after COVID. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing region to visit.
Have you been? You've been, obviously.
I have. It's a bit mind blowing because you don't, when you've been lucky enough, as I have, to travel to Burgundy and Bordeaux, the big boys, when you go to the Loire, you realize just how much is going on, and it's really super interesting. And I think if you're a wine lover, there's probably more cool styles to discover in the Loire than there are in many other regions.
Yeah. So Tessa took over the vineyard, like the winemaking, from her mother, who sadly passed away last year. She took over in 2015, and if you were to read a textbook or a wine bible or something on what Savagniers is, and you taste this, you'd be like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. And the reason why is Tessa has really brought a modern interpretation of Savagnin and really tried to bring the wine out of this like traditional, like, heap of, like, it was very alcoholic, it was very rich, it was age worthy, it was stuck in very much in the past. And this doesn't drink, like, it's 13.5, like a Sauvignon is 14-15%. Like, this isn't the definition of Sauvignon, but like, this is what I want to be drinking. I don't want to be drinking 14%, like it's like honey.
Not a whole bottle.
No.
Not, I mean, or sorry, a whole bottle, not sharing a bottle with someone. Which doesn't usually actually work out very well for the other person, I find.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's a good point. I think it, like, those style of Sauvignons are almost like drinking Fino sherry. Like, it's nice to have a glass, like it can be a very cool experience, but then you're like, okay, my palate is now exhausted from the amount of alcohol and the lack of delicacy almost.
Yeah. And it's still, there's still the hallmarks of Sauvignon in there. Like, it's so, like, there's so much flavor on your palate, and it just takes almost like an eternity to sort of like get ready for it. But like, there's also this acidity, there's also this like freshness that keeps you wanting to drink it. And I love it. And
I sort of get, lemon meringue and crushed rock at the same time. Which
so this is my Tessa Loro story. So 2019, Tessa's come to Canada to visit, and we had dinner at Grey Gardens, and it was great. And she's a wonderful person, and I bring some crazy Australian wine to share. And then I see her the next day at Piquet, where she's with the Grape Witches at like 11:30 at night, and they're just pouring champagne and doing all the weird hedonistic things that we want to do. But she's just like right in it. And then I see her the next day. She comes to my restaurant to do a tasting, and then finally I see her her fourth day of her visit, and she'd been convinced by Krista Oben, famous Grape Witch, to get a temporary tattoo of one of her labels on her arm. And she was very nervous. And she didn't understand how the temporary tattoo worked, because it's one of those newfangled ones where it goes on really light, and then it takes a day after you've had a shower to turn black, and then it lasts for like 2 weeks. It's not like those films where it peels off. It's like weird magic ink, technology ink. And so she's there. Her, Krista, and Kieran are sitting at the bar at Peter Pan for rainy lunch on a Thursday, and they're just like this, holding their arms out, and they've got this little thing on. It's amazing. She's like, you know, going through some kind of PTSD about getting a tattoo, and they're like, what am I Molly gonna think when I get home and she sees I have a tattoo? Anyway, it's very funny. And then I'm chatting to them, and then I walk away, and then one of the servers comes up and says, "Oh, someone's ordered the Knoll Gruner, the Smara Gruner, which is like $150 on my list." I'm like, "Who's ordered that?" Because Christy, Tessa LaRoche has already been there, and they're drinking wine, so they're fine. And I come up and I bring this bottle, and it's Cristiano Tiberio, who's sitting next to Tessa LaRoche at the bar, who's here in Ontario for a visit. And I'm pouring Cristiano Tiberio, some of the best Gruner in the world. And Tessa LaRoche is standing there with a temporary tattoo. And I'm like, have you two met each other? And they introduced and they started talking about wine. And it was this crazy experience where these two of the greatest female winemakers in the world are sitting at my bar, just having lunch, sharing Gruner, showing each other tattoos. That's my Tessa LaRoche / Cristiano Tiberio story.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of the wine world when it all comes together like that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think I then met Cristiano later that night at a Halloween party at a Casa Loma, and she's drinking some very expensive wines, and she's just quietly in the corner, like sipping like Soldero, and she's just like very calm. It's just such a calm person. Anyway, that's my Tessa LaRoche Cristiano story. And like the other one cool thing about Tessa LaRoche that I love, which again has nothing to do with about wine, she plays D&D, and she used to play D&D. So she pointed to the label Dungeons and Dragons, for those who don't know how much of a nerd I am. So if you look at the label of her wines, which I don't have in front of me, clearly, there's one window in that nana, and that's their D&D room. And she pointed it out to me, and I thought that was really cool. So that's that's why I love Tessa. And I can't wait for her to come back and hang out with.
And play Dungeons and Dragons with you?
Yeah. In what world would I wouldn't want that to happen? I don't understand.
Maybe you could do it as a Zoom call.
It'll be a fantasy scenario where we're like, I don't know, like saving a vineyard from a dragon or something, or we all have to make fantasy
wildfires.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun. Okay. Does anyone have anything to add about Sauvignons? What they thought this wine? I thought this wine was great.
Yeah. Well, in the summer, I think it was the 99 that I.
Ooh, nice.
I brought it to you.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
That's a great one. So the story about that wine is that year her mother was very sick, and she just, essentially forgot to export any wine. And so then Tessa was like, well, let's get rid of it. So that's why we have 99s on the market. And they're super great.
Cool.
But they're if you ever see one, I don't know if there's any left, but that is the very traditional style, her mother's style, which is this classic, rich, oxidized, dark golden Sauvignon. And it is really cool to see them side by side because they are night and day, and it's not age that kind of defines them. It is
the style.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Super cool. Yeah, I'd love to know if there was more of that. I'd love to revisit it for sure.
I'd love to revisit it side by side. That'd be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, someone on the chat, someone watching, has the power to do that, and they may be listening. Who can say?
Cool.
Cool.
On a rainy Thursday afternoon at the Peter Pan bar.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mika, you can turn around on your DeLong chart and cross off Shannon Blanc off your list. We've got Shannon, Trebbiano. I forget what we've tasted. Sake doesn't count, and Chardonnay.
I don't think that'll be on the chart.
Last one of the night. Oh, it's 4 minutes to go. Oh, this will be fun.
You can do it.
Sterling, the champion of Canadian wine. So Weigelt. So those who know me know I love Austrian wine. If you want a clue if there's any wine agents sitting in the audience, pour me an Austrian varietal, no matter where it's from, good chance I'll buy it, probably buy too much of it, probably drink a lot of it. So this is
Wow, it all comes out in this
I
forum.
told you. Look, when I'm in my shop, there's an understanding between the owner of Peter Pan, Noah, and me. When I'm in the shop, I try to be relatively professional. Wine coach is a whole different story.
We all need our space to let
Absolutely.
it go.
So this is Weigelt, or Rothberger, as we probably should call it. It's a traditionally Austrian varietal. Not obviously, we don't see a lot of it in Ontario. It does exist, as does Blaufränkisch, as Portuguese. All these varietals exist. They're just used for blending. Southbrook found some. They vinified it, and Sperling is the wine director, and Sperling is an icon in Canadian wine, known for starting Southbrook, helping start Benjamin Bridge in Nova Scotia. She has her and her husband Peter Gamble have a project in Argentina called Versado, which is extremely famous. They have the Sperling vineyards in the Okanagan, and you really can't go anywhere. You can't really talk about the history of Canadian wine without talking about Anne Sperling, and Southbrook is kind of the project that I'm most aligned to in terms of winemaking, what they do, how they champion Ontario. And this is a weird little Zweigelt that they kind of made, and I kind of like it. It tastes like Zweigelt. It does taste kind of like a really simple Zweigelt. You got that pepper, you got that dark fruit, not a huge amount of tannins, kind of very juicy, very easy to drink. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Unfortunately, this vineyard was pulled up 2 years ago. So this is the last vintage they ever made. And this is the last time you'll ever taste it.
So Southbrook, it was on the Southbrook property just outside of Niagara-on-the-Lake, or somewhere else?
No, it was on, I think it was on the bench. And it was a family that they've worked along with a long time for. And they had a parcel of Zweigelt that they bought, but that family subsequently pulled it out. Probably the plant starter now, I guess. I mean,
it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's very
not something we see in Niagara, so I think it's such a cool inclusion in this lineup.
I love the peppery sort of like greenness of it as well. Like it's interesting. And there is a delicacy to it, which is nice, because sometimes these hybrids can be a little bit blunt, maybe is the best way of putting it.
Good way.
Not terribly nuanced, but I think, it's not a super complex wine, but it's certainly very nicely made and quaffable.
Yeah, and the cuvee is called Whimsy. Like it's not supposed to be anything.
That's their line, their kind of fun line.
Yeah,
at Southbrook.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning when we talk about Anne Sperling how she's truly a champion of organics and biodynamics. So she comes from her family farm, which was Sperling Farm in BC, and that's really kind of, I wouldn't say her defining quality, but that's constantly the conversation anytime you're looking at any of her wines. And
you worked with Versado, so
those they're crazy wines. They're Argentinian Malbecs, and so interesting. And I find it always interesting when you're tasting her wines, because you're looking at Chardonnay from the Okanagan, or and then you're tasting these Argentinian Malbecs, but
I don't know how they actually do it. Like they must live their life in a plane.
It's a crazy schedule. Yeah. Sure.
I
But she's
mean, her and Peter are workhorses. Like it's like Chris to Oban level of like constantly busy, constantly doing things. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
But she's lovely, and
Wow.
if you have the chance to meet her, I'm sure some of you have. There's this level of intensity, and she's this powerful woman, but also so kind. And I know it's a little bit over, but I feel the need to say this as someone who's only, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in the wine industry for just a couple of years, and Anne Sperling, I represented her wines, but she didn't know who I was. Just like this person working around her wines. I loved her wines. I love what she does, but I went up to her and just quickly said hello. I wanted to introduce myself, and she stepped away from the table that she was pouring at and gave me 15 minutes undivided attention. And it's worth mentioning, so I've worked alongside Anne, and Anne took a chance and hired me, I guess 2 years ago. And I didn't have experience.
Right?
The other Anne.
This Anne, sorry, Anne Martin. Anne Martin hired me to come at MLSC, and she took a chance with me as a young woman who, I didn't come in with an ego blaring, and I didn't have this long list of experience, and she took a chance. And so I think there are a lot of women in this industry who will champion other women's. And so, when we look at this lineup and we talk about their viticultural practices, but having met them too, I think that's kind of a constant. And so, we didn't really talk too much about women in wine and maybe some of the challenges, but I think, it's inspiring to know that there are women who will lift up the younger generation. And I think it makes me very hopeful for the future. I don't know. That's like my 45-second Coles notes of everything I wanted to say, but.
No.
I think it's wonderful that you said that. And I mean, Mika is presenting herself in a much more humble, like she is from an incredible pedigree of her father's a famous chef. She has an amazing background, and it wasn't a chance that I was taking at all. It was a sure bet, really. And she really rose to the challenge, and I loved watching Mika grow in the role, and that is probably the most important part of my career, has been working with young sommeliers and bringing them along, and it's an amazing opportunity for me as well.
I don't need to chime in, but like
sure, the love,
Look, I definitely have challenged myself to mentor female and women somms in my community, and there is no higher example than you, Anne Martin, of people who champion women in our industry, to like give them confidence and experiences that they never have. Like, you are absolutely one of my heroes, and I super love it. So, I am super lucky because I get to I have 7 somms on my team, and I'm the only man. It's the collaboration and the community and the support that they give me and we give each other is,
it's great.
I don't like to harp on it, but it is the best thing I've ever done, is to hire and to bring on, women on my team, and they've defined the wine program, they defined what I've done. They made me a better somm, so they're going to make you a better wine drinker, and learn more and teach more and make more and everything. Fuck, man. Fuck them. You can't see me shrugging my shoulders, but that's the moral of the story.
And you have been doing an amazing job with these tastings and bringing the community together in a time where I think we've all felt a little bit disconnected. So thank you for all of your iconic work over the last year, especially.
Thank you, Anne. That's high praise. And look, the only thing I try to do is bring fun to these fucking Zoom calls.
Bring it
How
on.
fucking boring are wine Zoom calls. If you think, if there's ever a moment where you're like, this is Wine Coach is getting boring, please tell me. I have so many boring Zoom calls where I have 7 winemakers from around the world, sitting in front of their desk and they got like looking at wrong way and they're just telling me about like their wine, and I'm like, okay, thank you, I'm moving.
I know it's a weird world, but you know, it is great for people to be able to taste at home, and there's some really great things that have come out of it. But I will be very glad to get back to live events.
Christiana was actually really good. The one I did, she was like, had her iPad, she was like in the middle of the vineyard, like talking and I'm like, that's how you do it. You got to bring some show personship to the call. You know, I got art. Yeah, you've got a chart, a book, a thing. I mean,
a plant.
I like the plant.
I like the plant. Thank you all. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mika, for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
And before we go, thank you to our sponsors who sponsored a few people coming tonight. That was really appreciated. There's 2 tickets left to Saturday night special tasting, Sacha and Bon Rocher Premier Cru and Sake, hosted by Mariko Tajiri, who's thankfully watching. Hi, Mariko. And Sheila Flattery, which I'm really excited about, a little PYCM moment as well. And then we've got Alpine wine next week, and I really want to explore some cool mountainous wines, which I think is weird and fun, but I know people love it so much.
I like that theme. It's a great theme.
Yeah, we've got some Alto Adige, we've got some Valtellina, we've got some Val d'Aoste, we've got some Jura. I'll see what else I can find.
Look at you go, climbing the heights.
Yeah, I just want to go there. I mean, this is all just about where I want to go. I mean, I just want to visit. I want to see like Matterhorn and some French Alps or Italian or whatever they call it.
Lederhosen, bring them on.
Hey. Thank you very much. Everyone have a lovely evening. I will see everyone next week later. Come to Peter Pan. We open on Friday night. There's going to be lots of fun wines, and there's going to be lots of out of practice somms who need some hard questions. So please come and ask them. What grape is in this Lambrusco? That's the #1 question you need to ask. Anyway, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mika. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Rachel, in the chat. And